Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast. We are brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. First round of the NHL Draft is in the books. Is it really over yet?
I have an opinion on these decentralized drafts, and it is going to be a one and done for sure, Pat, because it was a tough day all around. The broadcast hit hiccups. I have a theory that Gary Bettman secretly liked that we hit a lot of hiccups because he's going to go back to the owners and GMs or whoever, and he's going to be like, see, I told you, let's get back to our normal routine again.
Yeah, it's clear that Gary didn't like the decentralized draft from the get-go, and I think you're right. I think next year it'll be back to normal. We can maybe talk a little bit more about that later, but let's get to the really important stuff. The three newest members of the Chicago Blackhawks as the Hawks take three players in the first round, and of course, it started with the third overall pick, Anton Frondell, and I don't think it surprised you or me, even though there was some question whether or not San Jose would take Michael 𝗻𝗎.
Yeah, so over the 72 hours leading into the NHL draft, there was a lot of smoke behind San Jose possibly wanting Anton Frondell at number 2, which obviously would have meant Michael 𝗻𝗎 would have fell into Chicago's laps at number 3. But all along, you and I, Pat, had been hearing very consistent things that Chicago was expecting that 𝗻𝗎 was going to go to number 2 to San Jose. And I'm not sure how serious it ever got for San Jose that they got to a point where they were actually leaning in the Frondell category. And it was a little bizarre that a lot of these rumors were coming out from people that were boots on the ground in LA because none of the teams were in LA. So it was a little confusing to me how all the rumors started. I digress. Anton Frondell is their guy. Chicago said from the beginning that they were zeroing in on him pretty early in the process. Not necessarily that he was at the top of their list at number 3 overall all season long, but Kyle Davidson was saying that he was in the conversation all season long based on how he played and just the tools that he provided. The one thing that stood out to me in Kyle Davidson's presser, and Mike Doneghey said this as well, is they believe that Frondell's game will translate to May and June. Like they very clearly see this guy as not just a regular season player, but his game is going to get elevated or potentially even magnified in the postseason when the game gets tighter, things get chippier. Frondell is that guy where he's a two-way forward, can play center or wing. I think they're going to draft him as a center, so I think he is kind of like potential first or second line center, depending on who's going to get pushed to the wing and all of this. But I think the Blackhawks are very happy that Frondell is the player that fell to them at number 3.
So they go with Frondell. They go with the 200-foot centerman who played in the Swedish men's league as far as playing with veteran players, and they were promoted last year. He was interviewed by you guys. That was one of the hiccups also with the decentralized draft. If you're going to have all the prospects in the first round drafted and then given access to an interview with the home city that drafted them, don't have them 10 feet or 5 feet or whatever it was apart, because you guys were trying to talk to Frondell, and unfortunately we were hearing other
Martone in the next guy over,
and the lag, and it was just like, really, like did anybody think this through? Like having 6 Zooms simultaneously going on 5 feet apart would not go well. But I digress. What was your biggest takeaway? Because I'll tell you what, the kid's charismatic, and obviously English is not his first language, and that did not seem to be a hurdle at all.
Not at all. And actually, one thing that stood out to me, Mike Doneghey was talking in his post draft presser. He said in all his years in his 4 years that he's been the chief scout for Chicago, at the NHL scouting combine in Buffalo, each team has put a time limit on their interviews with each prospect because they go from team to team to team. He said Anton Frondell was the one player where we exceeded our time limit because we like time just got away from us. Like that's how much he won the interview process. And this is maybe why there were some of the smoke screens going on about Frondell potentially going to number 2, because he really did win the combine, both in the fitness testing, but also the way off of it as well, and the way that he interviewed. Man, I'm excited to get to know Frondell a little bit more because he does seem to be a joy around. But I love what I heard from him in some of the snippets, like, for example, where he plans to play next season. He signed a 1-year extension to go for the Swedish Hockey League. And when we asked him today, he's like, yeah, I'm competing for a roster spot at a training camp. And if I'm not good enough, I'll go back to Sweden. And then we talked to Kyle Davidson, and he's like, we're not going to put a plan on it, but right now we were thinking that he's going to go back to Sweden. But like, he wants to force Chicago's hand right out of the gate, and you appreciate that kind of mentality from Frondell, even though I agree that he should start next season in Sweden to kind of get acclimated and not be thrown into the fire too much. I also loved. I asked him about Connor Bedard.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, he's like, I started following him at a young age, and then as soon as he got drafted by Chicago, he immediately started following the Blackhawks on Instagram, and he was like following his progression. The other thing that Doneghey had mentioned in his interview, because Frondell said about Bedard, he said, if I have a chance to play with him, it will be really cool. Doneghey said that in the interview process in Buffalo at the scouting combine, when he asked about, do you prefer center or wing? He's like, I'll play whichever one Connor doesn't. Like he wanted an opportunity to play with Connor as well. So I think there's like a mutual respect here between Frondell and likely going to be Bedard once he gets to know Frondell on a deeper level.
All right, so you got a chance to talk to Mike Doneghey, the director of amateur scouting, afterwards, and Kyle Davidson. Did Davidson talk about just the dynamics of the 3rd overall pick and some of the things that were going on with the rumors and how they eventually decided that Frondell was the right choice for this franchise?
Yeah, so 2 things. He was asked specifically about, hey, like once solved, the San Jose talk or whatever, and he said that the way that things progressed is the way that we had planned for them to progress. So like he thought all along it was going to be Schaefer 1, 𝗻𝗄 2. Hawks were preparing for Frondell to be at number 3. The second thing that I thought was interesting is he kind of debunked I don't know if it was rumors because I don't really know where exactly it started, but he said that number 3 was never offered in a trade package. So that was not. It might have been on the table, like in trade discussions. Like he said, there were conversations about number 3, but there were never any offers about number 3. So I think that it would have taken a lot to pry away the 3rd overall pick for Chicago.
All right, so then the Hawks had the 25th overall pick. That was the pick they got from Tampa, right?
Yeah, Toronto. Yeah, that was made. That was made 3 hours after Frondell got selected. So it was a while. We waited.
They went with the power forward, the 6'6", 185-pound forward, Vaclav Nestrasil. How do you say it?
Nestrasil. I don't even know how to pronounce the first name though. Is it Vaclav Nestrasil?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna have to listen to John Wiedemann how he pronounces it. That's just my cue on how I. But it goes against because the Hawks have been collecting a lot of young, speedy forwards, right? So when you see, okay, Hawks are coming up at number 23, naturally your eye goes to, okay, where are the speedsters, right? But then you see the Blackhawks draft a 6'6" forward in Nestrasil, who put up a respectable, 42 points in 61 games, also helped them win a Clark Cup in the USHL. So big body, but I do think it's much needed organizational size. Like that, not everyone is going to play in the top 6, right? There's only 6 spots to play in the top 6, and so I think the Hawks looked at it like, hey, it naturally worked out that way, that he was the highest on their board. But I think subconsciously it was probably like, let's make sure that we're surrounding some of our younger forwards with some size to complement our mix and the blend that the Blackhawks want to have on their teams moving forward.
So they took Nestrasil at 25. Now, we did not do a podcast where we predicted who the Blackhawks might take with their second overall pick. You and I both talked ad nauseum about Frondell and how we thought that was going to play out. I did some stuff for CHSN earlier in the week, and on one of the Google Docs that I prepared, I put 25th pick, and I just put 𝗻𝗁𝗁𝗃. And just what I had been reading about him, this was a total dart at the board. I mean, there was no intel on this other than, draft experts and their analysis on the player, knowing full well where the Blackhawks lack organizationally in the size department. And to see him go at 24 to Pittsburgh,
traded up to, yeah.
Yeah, like I wondered how much, it was a Nestrasil situation, and if 𝗁𝗁𝗃 is not taken at 24, if 𝗁𝗁𝗃 is a Blackhawk.
Interesting. So what's actually interesting is, so Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times, he was in Buffalo for the scouting combine, and he said he went up to 𝗁𝗁𝗃 because he wanted to talk to him just in case that he was a player that Chicago is targeting at number 25. And Ben asked him, have you had dinner, or did you meet with Chicago? And he's like, no, they're the one team that I didn't meet with. So he was literally, he met with 31 teams but Chicago. So I don't know, maybe he was on their radar, but it was kind of like, we don't want to tip our hand kind of thing. But they did target, because then, we'll advance to the number 29 overall pick. The Blackhawks draft another 6'6" forward in Mason West, who, by the way, this is an amazing story, Pat. Do you want to take it away?
No, go for it.
Okay, so Mason West is a dual sport athlete. It's kind of similar to 𝗻𝗄𝗋𝗄𝗃 last year, where he plays football and hockey. Mason West is a quarterback for his high school team, and so he's going into his senior year of high school. And we asked him today, any thought to just committing full time to hockey? And he's like, that community has meant so much to me, and I'm their quarterback. I would feel like I'm letting my team down if I don't play my senior year, because we have championship aspirations. We want to win the state title. I'm like, you know what? I admire that approach, because he's not doing it in a selfish way. Like, I don't want to get hurt. I got to play hockey. You can see the heart behind it. So what he's going to do is he's going to play senior year quarterback. Then he's going to transition into the USHL's Fargo. And then the following season, he's going to play hockey at Michigan State. So the 2006-27, go Sparty for Pat. So very interesting path for him. I thought it was interesting, though, that Kyle Davidson in his presser afterwards, he said he acknowledged that the Hawks gave up more to go get him. They're like, he's like, I'm not at a point now where I'm trying to pin. He's like, I want to swing for the fences. I want to go for home runs. And if this guy hits, he's like, it feels like he has all the raw tools. Once he commits full time to hockey, he could be potentially a special player for Chicago.
It is a very cool story. And let me tell you, he can spin it. His numbers as a quarterback are insane.
He had like 120 passer rating
and like 4 interceptions or something like that. I mean, he may not only be a dual athlete at Edina High School in Minnesota, he may be one at Michigan State and maybe come to Chicago and play for the Bears as well.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if you heard the 32 Thoughts podcast. They were talking about Mason West, and they're like, what happens if he rips it up his senior year at the quarterback and he's getting D1 offers, but he said he's already made the commitment to hockey. And I don't think the Blackhawks would have taken Mason West if they felt some doubt that he might go to football. So like, I think they feel really comfortable that he's going to be a full-time hockey player. The one thing that I love about his game is like when you think 6'6", you think, all right, this guy must be a fighter, power forward, runs through walls. when we asked him who's the guy that you model yourself after, he's like 𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏. I'm like, oh, all right, that's the guy. That, I relayed that to Mike Doneghey and said, hey, Mason West said, 𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏 is a comparable, and he's like, well, naturally you see the big frame. He's like, I'm not sure he's going to score 40 or 50 a year, but if those are the tools that he has, that's a really impressive skill set, and with the way he skates, I think it is going to be good. And Doneghey said as well, like him playing quarterback, you can actually see it in his hockey game because when he enters the zone, he's looking for the next play, like he's a quarterback, like he's processing before he makes his next move. And so it sounds like he has a high hockey IQ as well to go along with his skill set.
Before we get your takeaways from the rest of the first round of the NHL draft, any other takeaways from the conversation with Kyle Davidson and Mike Doneghey?
Nothing that stood out to me. I think we were asking too about just what's going to happen between now and free agency, because we're not going to talk to Kyle until after July 1st. It'll only be Mike talking on Saturday after the second round, and usually I think it's very much.
Well, they won't have a pick in the second round after second day.
Yeah, after the second day. My bad. So here's what I'll say. Just kind of reading the tea leaves, I don't think the Hawks are going to be very aggressive in free agency, because this free agent market is very thin, and you do not want to get into an irresponsible decision where you're paying, a bottom six forward to play in your top six for a dumb amount of money that could be irresponsible in the long term. So I think if the Blackhawks do try to improve their roster, it's going to be through trade, where they can identify a player that is like cost controlled. They know what they're getting, and they don't have to compete in a bidding wars in a bidding war. So, so we'll see what happens between now and free agency. But yeah, that's about it. How about this, Pat? The third time in 4 years, Blackhawks have had 3 first-round picks. 3 first-round picks, so 11 over the last 4 years. I mean, that's incredible. I'm not sure if you went into this rebuild when they stripped it to the studs. I'm not sure I would have seen a path for them to get this many first-round picks. So credit to Kyle Davidson for accumulating the amount he has.
I mean, think about it. They went into some drafts with no first-round picks.
Yeah,
and made 3 picks. I mean, it speaks to Kyle's mantra about the value of first-round picks and the hit rate in the first round versus other rounds. And he's done a hell of a job accumulating draft equity and being able to mortgage that into multiple first-round picks. It's been really impressive. And, we're finally seeing some of them play, at the NHL level. And again, the 3 that we're taking on this night, we're not expecting to see any of them next year. And it'll probably be a couple years to 3 years down the road that we do. But it's pretty cool when you see the success rate and you see Stanley Cup final teams and you look at the rosters and how they're littered with first round picks, and not only first round picks, but usually top 15 first round picks.
Right. Yeah. And then they got 2 more next year, and you got a boatload of second round picks still in the coming years. So it's like, man, they've really done a nice job of assembling draft picks that I didn't see coming. Like, you get a second round pick for Jason Dickinson, and then Jason Dickinson turns into a player, and you're like, oh, we were just trying to get the contract off the books, and we also got a third. So it's been great moves by Kyle, and it's nice to see it start to come to fruition.
One thing we didn't see, Charlie, was a NHL player moved during the draft, which we thought that this decentralized draft might produce. We did see Noah Dobson traded earlier in the day. Your thoughts on the Dobson trade and the fact that we didn't really see any movement of any NHL players during the first round?
Yeah, so I thought the Noah Dobson trade was actually going to set us up for a very interesting draft, because Frank Seravalli, who we had on the last podcast, he originally reported that the conversations around Dobson were for NHL players. And then he was the first to report to say, update, the New York Islanders have now pivoted to futures because now they want to try to package whatever draft picks that they get for Dobson to try to also trade up and grab Long Island native James Higgins. So after they take Matthew Schaefer with the number 1 overall pick, and you're going down to 4 and 5 and 6, you're like, all right, when are the Islanders going to swoop in and get Higgins? And they never did. And so I don't know if there's any sort of regret, like wishing that they would have ironed out the second part of the deal before they made and kind of have that duck in a row before. But at the same time, it would have been hard to predict, because if Higgins, was off the board at 5, well, then that was hard to do. But if he's fallen to 8 or 9, then they can swoop in. So I thought that was interesting that the Islanders just basically there wasn't a second move after the Noah Dobson trade. I also want to say this about JJ Peterka. I know that trade got a lot of it broke the night before the draft or whatever, or 2 nights before, and the return to the naked eye looked pretty underwhelming. But when you factor in what Buffalo was specifically looking for, they were looking for the right-hand shot D to play with 𝗏𝗏, Erasmus Dahlin, and Michael Kesselring, who is, by the way, is a very underrated defenseman, and I actually think will get a lot more love playing in Buffalo than he did in his previous stomping ground. And then Josh Stone, probably middle six winger. But with JJ Peterka in Chicago, because I know Chicago was in on that, you would admire the offense that he would bring, but he's a pretty one-dimensional player where a lot of his offense comes off the rush. So he wouldn't really be able to play. I don't think he would have been a fit to play with Connor Bedard, because Connor likes to cycle it, like he wants someone to play off of in the offensive zone. Peterka is kind of like a straight line guy. So I'm okay with the Hawks not overpaying to go after Peterka. Sounds like they at least attempted, which I appreciate, but I don't mind that they kind of passed on him. Like, I think they could allocate that money elsewhere as they start to get more aggressive in free agency in the coming years.
Hey, you mentioned Connor Bedard just quickly on a tangent. He spoke to Mark Lazarus of The Athletic a few days ago. Any big takeaways you had from that? I guess the thing that stuck out to me was his realization that he's going to have to adapt a little bit to some of the things that he thought were staples to playing this game, and that staying on the ice an hour after practice and skating every day and doing all these things, realizing that at times the best recipe for having success in a National Hockey League game might be to pull back in other areas, which to me is an important step in his maturation process. Your thoughts on kind of what you took away from that conversation?
Yeah, I thought that was a really mature response by Connor. And also, I'm sure that he's been reflecting a lot over the last 2 months to kind of see what his body needs to help prepare him for the rigors of an 82-game season. Because obviously his rookie year, he missed 14 games with a broken jaw, so he didn't get the full 82-game experience. I also love that he said about he's eligible to sign a contract extension on July 1. But he definitely left the door open that it might not happen right away. And it could even trickle into next season or even after the season, because he might want to bet on himself too. If he feels like the changes that he's making in his offseason program could propel him to have a really big year. Like, I think it would be important for him as a player to bet on himself, especially with the rising salary cap. But I love that he said, people that know me, I want to be here in Chicago for life. So he didn't leave any doubt that he was going anywhere, similar to what he said in the exit interviews.
On that topic, Emily Kaplan during the draft broadcast talked about a conversation she had with Kyle, and she alluded to the Nazar and Bedard potential extension talks, and that there didn't seem to be any urgency or rush, and that this may take some time. It's on everybody's plate, and it's top of mind, but there's no rush to get it done.
Right. This isn't a situation where these young players are entering UFA. Like they're still pending RFAs. So it's not like, oh my gosh, if we don't sign them this year, they're going to walk. Like they're still Blackhawks property for many years to come. And there's no reason for either of them to even want to go elsewhere because they know they're going to be foundational pieces for the Blackhawks. So yeah, it's more so the players understand that the salary cap is going to be rising exponentially over the next few years, and they want as much information as possible to know whether they want to go long-term or short-term and what that number looks like.
How about Sam Bennett? 8 years times $8 million. So I think he at a Miami nightclub said it was 8 times 7.5. That got bumped up a little bit, if you know what I'm saying. So Sam Bennett had himself a windfall with a hell of a Stanley Cup playoff performance.
He did, and good on him for cashing out. Now the interesting development between now and July 1st is if they can get Aaron Ekblad or Brad Marchand done. Feels like one of the two maybe, and they might even miss out on both. But I imagine they want to try to keep 2 of the 3.
Yeah, I think Ekblad will stay, and I think Marchand is the one that will end up going elsewhere. That'll be interesting to see where he will end up going, and he's going to make himself a great final contract in the National Hockey League. Big news in the minutes and hours leading up to the first round of the NHL Draft. The NHL and the NHLPA agreed on a 4-year CBA extension that'll run through September of 2030. That is fantastic news for anybody in the hockey business, for fans, for players. You don't want work stoppage. Work stoppage helps nobody. One of the top line items is that we're going to have an 84-game regular season beginning in the 26-27 campaign, and they will take a couple of exhibition games off the table. I don't see this as a big deal. This is more money for the players, more money for the league, and it's taking 2 meaningless games off the table and putting 2 meaningful games on.
Oh, this is a win-win for everyone. And you're seeing other sports do it as well, like NFL going from 16 to 17. Like we're just adapting with the times, and everything is money driven. When COVID hit, the players had to defer salary, and so they had to defer a lot of salary, and so the escrow pot, not to bog down with details, but it took a long time for that pot to finally get back to normal, right? And now you have the salary cap going to rise exponentially over the next 3 years. Now you factor in that there are going to be 2 extra regular season games, less exhibition games. That's more money for the players, more money for the owners, more money for the salary cap. And if in a couple years the NHL decides to introduce more expansion teams, I mean, I don't know what the salary cap could be in 7-8 years. Like it's going to be pretty chaotic. So love that,
especially if we get these expansion teams like everybody's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So how about some of these other things? So the playoff game rosters now must be cap compliant. So there's the loophole of the LTIR with the Vegases and the Tampa Bays. And then how about this? Full-time emergency goaltender. So I think that's really cool because this emergency third goaltender is essentially going to get paid a salary that's not going to count on the salary cap. But it's my understanding it's however many dollars the team wants it to be. So if you're a big name team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, you say, hey, you could be our third goaltender. We'll give you $200K a year to do it. Versus if you're a lower market team, you're like, we can only offer $70K. So like that's where if you're like a big market team, you can flex your muscles and actually get like a quality third goaltender that can travel. So I think that's really interesting. And then lastly, the term limits for free agents, it's going down from 8 years to 7 years for under team control, and then 7 to 6 for free agency, which I think is going to be actually going to be pretty interesting because then it eliminates the possibility of going longer term like you saw the Chris Tanev deal with Toronto last year, where they're like, we'll give you 7-8 years, just lower that AAV for us, knowing full well that he's not going to see the end of that contract.
Yeah, I think it's the playoff game rosters being cap compliant to me is the one of the most interesting items in the new CBA. Do they give any specifics on that? I mean, is it going to be whatever the cap limit is in the regular season? It's going to be the exact same thing, because that's been absolutely abused over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. So what I haven't done more research into this, and I'm sure somebody will correct me or I'll look into it after. But so it's the playoff rosters must be cap compliant. But it's my understanding that it's the lineup that is on the ice that must be cap compliant. So like in the original, like an active roster in the regular season, your 23-man roster has to be cap compliant. So is there wiggle room where, all right, here are 18 guys we're dressing for tonight, or the 12 forwards, 6 defensemen. So like our 20 guys. So like, do you have a wiggle room for the 3 players where you're like, all right, we'll carry that into our guy dressing? I have no idea, but at least it prevents oh, hey, we have a $9.5 million coming off our books and he's going to be ready for game 1 of the playoffs. And it's just, it's the Tampa Bay situation all over again.
All right. I think that's going to do it. We got round 2 through 7 on Saturday. Hawks have right now, as we tape this, which is late, actually Saturday morning, almost.
14 more minutes until we
14 more minutes of Saturday morning. No second round pick. They have 1 pick in the 3rd, 2 in the 4th, none in the 5th, and 1 pick in the 6th. So we will see what additions are made to the roster. But all in all, great job as always, Charlie. Way to carry the bag as you often do. And thank you for taking care of this podcast and making sure it happened tonight.
Of course, anytime. So day 1 of the NHL draft, the TV allocated, it was 6 to 9:30. And I believe the first round ended at 10:30. So on Saturday, day 2, I believe the TV is allocated from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to hammer the over. Do you remember that COVID year where it was like 8 o'clock at night and we were still going? I mean, yeah. So it's gonna be a long day tomorrow, but hang with us.
All right, that's gonna do it for the
last one. The Blackhawks unveiled their centennial jerseys. They look so sweet. The gold crest, the gold stroke around the crest is an amazing touch. I know it kind of seems simple, but it's sharp, and I'm looking forward to seeing that on the ice next year.
Why mess with success, right? If it's the best jersey in the National Hockey League, why would you try to do more to it than what you just mentioned? So that's going to be an awesome touch for the 100-year anniversary of this franchise. That is going to do it for the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you next time.